Hello everyone, welcome to a new video for Bitcoin price prediction based on Elliott wave analysis. This is the indicators analysis for every Sunday as we used to have. Of course, today we're gonna run another live stream just for your special request. Don't forget, of course, to join us for any special request to be analyzed live. Now we're gonna start, of course, first with the Elliott wave on the 2 hour chart for Bitcoin to see what's going on and what we might expect today or tomorrow. So basically, yesterday we mentioned that we are still, of course, in a potential bear market, probably that it might, of course, extend towards the downside. But before moving very, very bearish, we have a testing area, which it can be, of course, a potential of a reversal for bullish from there. And that means, of course, this testing area might finish, of course, here as an A, B, and a C, where we would like to see, of course, the one-to-one fib level 100K, 102K can be, of course, a very psychological number for a potential rebound toward the upside. The scenario that you might see here moving towards the upside might be, of course, a scenario for the bull run still unfolding as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a wave 5. The wave 5 might be an ending diagonal. The ending diagonal wave 4 has to hit the perfect fib levels for a wave 4, 0.38, 0.5 fib levels, meaning ABC as 1-to-1 fib level, and then moving for a final wave 5, which it might reach the 135 or 145K. Now on the 2 hour chart back again, we can see that the price is still ranging sideways correctively after, of course, a trend downward. And that means, of course, we're going to see continuation for the price to move for lower again. And that because we have a corrective pattern here as a W, X, and a Y, A, B, C, D, and an E. Potential wave Y is a triangle here. And then we start, of course, to continue the trend for lower prices, still expecting the blue box to be hit and even, of course, lower in case, of course, we break this blue box and we see lower prices, meaning we might see an extension or a fractal impulse here, transforming this to double 1, 2, wave 3, after, of course, having the wave 5, then having 4, 5, 4, and a 5 to hit perfectly the 102K as expected. In case we see a very clear rebound toward the upside as very strong 5 waves up and breaking the high, we might see, of course, a reversal here again. But probably we have to find, of course, a potential resistance here with the 1-to-1 fib level unless it is broken and continue for higher. Of course, in this case, we see what's going on in different scenarios because, of course, you might have finished a very short wave ABC here, which it can be, of course, a very short also 0.23 rather than the 0.38, which is very low possibility, but can be, guys, in case, of course, Bitcoin is gonna reverse for bullish. So we're gonna see it, of course, after this one more low. All right, so this is regarding the Elliott wave. As per Elliott wave, I'm still looking at least for one more low here to reach at least the lower price, and of course finishing this impulse correcting like nicely, and then of course potentially moving toward the upside. Maybe, of course, it might be a corrective and then continuation simply for lower. Now let's see, of course, the indicators, what do they say, and let's start with the RSI. So for the RSI on the 2 hour chart, as we are here, so you can see basically that we might have kind of like a divergence here for bullish a little bit. But if we take, of course, this divergence from there, you can see a little bit of divergence with the prices. But basically, the pattern that we see here for Elliott wave do not suggest really higher prices. It's still, of course, very corrective and still moving for lower potentially here after all, because if we are moving for higher and this divergence is working nicely, you would like to see, of course, something like that. 5 ways up, 3 ways down, continuation toward the upside, and not simply, of course, sideways range. And we see, of course, kind of like a very complex corrective structure. And that means the trend is going to continue toward the downside, so we don't have to be really misleaded by any kind of indicators. I prefer, of course, always much more Elliott wave here. But however, of course, even on the 4 hour chart, you can see also another divergence for the 4 hour chart here for potential bullish. I still, of course, see that this can be possible, but of course after one more low. Yeah, so one more low can still be possible here. And despite, of course, that we see kind of like a divergence on the 4-hour chart, we see also lower lows here on the RSI. It still can, the RSI move for lower again, and this can, of course, create one more low, and therefore here getting a very strong diversion or bullish signal on the RSI in regarding the price, and then start to move for higher. So I would say, okay, the things might be ready to move for higher probably, but after one more low, and obviously that the price here is not ready to move really for bullish. On the daily, we can see as well that we have a potential bearish divergence here working very clearly. We can see, of course, the divergence for the bearish is starting from the top here, where we had, of course, a top for Bitcoin potentially, and we start to see kind of like lower prices. Now, basically, the price is continuing for lower. We don't see, of course, yet any kind of reversal. For the bullish here, you can see potentially that, yeah, the RSI has took the low, but of course the price did not yet, creating kind of like a small divergence. But I believe that the daily RSI might still, of course, hit the low or the oversold area. And I think by hitting the oversold area, we might still see, of course, lower prices. I'm expecting to finish the ABC here, at least the scenario that I mentioned as per Elliott wave. And regarding the RSI on the daily, I still see it, of course, very clearly that it might, of course, hit the oversold area and having an ABC, and then potentially moving for our bullish scenario, which I just mentioned in the start of this video. So much more likely, I prefer to take here the RSI, much preferably on the daily, which is much more safer, and to see it much more clearer in a way that it gives us a clearer view what it might happen. So I still believe that, of course, the daily is gonna be hit sooner or later for the oversold. On the weekly as well, we can see, of course, a very strong bearish divergence as well during this bull run toward the upside. We can see, of course, starting from this high here, we can see the first bearish divergence, of course, giving us one leg toward the downside, followed by another divergence as well for the bearish here, as you can see, and the price or the momentum has started to fall down. Now we can see, of course, this is moving for lower, and I believe the weekly, of course, can still move for lower in case we are bearish here, and we're looking for the A, B, and a C. If you go back, of course, for the deep analysis here, you know that we might be here in a potential big ABC as an expanding flat. Sorry, I mean this one ABC here, which it can be, of course, after 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Okay, so this is your wave 1, your wave 2, and you might, of course, see it on the RSI with the weekly here, where the weekly can still, of course, reach the low here one more time for a new bull run. Yeah, so this might be, of course, in confluence here with this area where we can see, of course, a new low on the RSI, probably, of course, in case we don't see a reversal from the midline. Yeah, because this might be a support area here on the midline and then start to move toward the upside, and that means, of course, the ABC here as the scenario we mentioned as bullish, meaning finishing, of course, as an ending diagonal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably the midline of the RSI might play a role in this scenario. We're gonna see if this is gonna happen, but basically this is what we need to watch. The midline on the weekly and also the oversold on the daily for the RSIs. Those are the most important one to be watched. Now, if we move to the MACD, now, starting with the MACD on the 1-hour chart, we can see that we see the MACD line and the signal line are, of course, moving toward the upside. You are very close, of course, to the reset line here, or the zero level, and we see, of course, potentially that the momentum here for the bulls was increasing actually, but currently is kind of like a little bit settling down. It is weekend, you know, guys, but don't forget that this can still, of course, move for higher sooner or later. In case we are looking for something higher here, it can be, of course, a deeper correction. Definitely nothing is going to be bullish here. I mean, the pattern is definitely very sideways. We cannot really move bullish from there. We need, of course, a good preparation for 1-2 before moving very bullish. Whatever we're gonna get later, whether a little bit higher prices than moving down, this is gonna be very corrective, of course, and we're gonna see continuation of the trend downward because, of course, we are still corrective even if we get a little bit higher. However, don't forget that the momentum here is, of course, like moving for lower. We might see, of course, the 1 hour chart rebounding, of course, downward as well for the bearish. On the 4 hour chart for the MACD as well, we can see that we have a bullish cross from there, of course, in also confluence with the RSI, where we saw a potential bullish divergence in this area. But again, I trust much more Elliott wave. I know that we might see a little bit higher prices, which it might be a simple corrective rebound, but also it can be, of course, continuation for lower because Elliott wave pattern is very corrective in this area. We cannot count any kind of 1-2s here to reach something very bullish. And that means, of course, this might rebound sooner or later. Of course, I mean, despite that we have a bullish cross, despite that we're moving toward the upside and the momentum is rising up, it still can be, of course, having a little bit higher prices, but still, of course, higher possibility to continue the trend downward. So by all meaning here, the indicators, okay, it helps that some resistance or some support here is very strong, and of course that you might see, of course, some rebound, but it's not necessarily here as per Elliott wave to be very bullish, of course, because yeah, the things are not really looking very ready for bullish. On the daily for the MACD, which is, I consider it the most important one, we'll see, of course, a bearish cross here. And we see the MACD and the signal line moving downward and are open in a trend, of course, toward the downside, which it might be, of course, the situation where you see a continuation, further continuation downward for the daily on the MACD, despite, of course, the light color here for a reduced momentum. But don't forget, we are in a weekend. Once this daily might start move towards the downside again, we might see, of course, continuation for the momentum in red, of course, here on the daily. So we gotta be very careful. So the most important for RSI and MACD, of course, in this stage or in this phase for Bitcoin is to watch the daily and the weekly because they are the most important one. On the weekly, as you can see, with confluence with the RSI as well, before that we have, of course, a bearish divergence. We see the same divergence on the MACD line and the signal line, plus the bearish cross here that we see, of course, in the top, plus the open trend still, of course, for lower prices, meaning the trend is still, of course, looking for lower sooner or later, despite, of course, the lower time frame that it shows a little bit of rebound. Elliott wave already confirmed that this is a correction. We might continue for lower. Therefore, much better and much more efficient is, of course, to look at the MACD and the RSI on the daily and the weekly. Obviously, on the weekly, we have a very strong trend that it might open downward. We see a momentum here increasing for the bearish. We might see, of course, the signal line and the MACD line opening for a massive downtrend. And this might be, of course, our small bear market that we were talking about it towards the 70K for Bitcoin, and then starting a new bull run towards the 200K and above it. A, B, and a C expanding flat, and then, of course, continuation for higher. Yep, so these are the possibilities here for the MACD and RSI. Again, I repeat, the most important are the daily and the weekly. Ignore what's going on the lower time frame. Let's move for the next one, which is the KGT. So for the KGT here on the 3-minute chart, we can see for this range and this corrective wave, we can see, of course, a lot of pressure of selling still there, and in convergence with the price action and the CVD line. We see, of course, that this might unfold a further downtrend sooner or later. We see also a pressure coming from the top even. So even if we move a little bit higher, you still have a very huge pressure here. You can see it, of course, on the 5-minute chart, meaning a little bit higher prices might, of course, trigger another bearish signal very soon here on the 5-minute chart, which is going to be in a very strong convergence with the previous signal here, and it might unfold a very strong downtrend after it. Now, for the bullish here, I don't see yet a very strong divergence, of course, and a lack of signal for the bullish here is still required. Yeah, we still need, of course, a bullish signal even to be stronger, and that means, of course, I would like to see a strong divergence here within the price and the CVD line, which is very, very missing here. So therefore, I believe that we might still in a very strong pressure convergence for the bearish, and of course, the price might move sooner or later toward the downside based on KGT. Now, if we move to the volume, now, regarding the volume on the 1 hour chart, we can see, of course, that we start to see a very strong amount of volume here, or very high amount of volume with every single downtrend. Now, the highest amount is given in this latest downtrend, followed by a very corrective pattern. And that where I was saying, be careful that this might transform to a wave 3, meaning this is your 1, 2, 1, 2, and then wave 3 to the downside might be unfolding here, and which is not yet finished even, because you're still looking for a wave 5 potentially. And in case that you are in a wave 5 over there, of course it is truncated or not did not took the low. Let's say this is a finished with the volume here, a finished wave 5. Where is your 1, 2 here for higher prices? So that is nothing bullish, guys. Again, of course, despite, of course, that the volume we are looking at, this is very normal for a Sunday. Normally a Sunday, I don't know, it is much more, always much more active than Saturday, actually. And we start to see some volume. That means, of course, we might see some movement today. It might be the continuation for lower sooner or later. Yeah, so later meaning a little bit higher and then moving up. Don't forget the KGT pressure coming up from here with bearish signals, and it might be very, very convergence, and of course continue the downtrend for lower prices. Regarding the volume on the 4 hours chart, you can see clearly that the highest amount of volume is given in this wave, transforming this to double 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Sorry, even wave 3 not finished yet, 4 and a 5, 4 and a 5. And that means, of course, it's a very, very long downtrend that might be unfolding here. We still see, of course, continuation of high amount of volume still unfolding here. And we still might see, of course, some pressure sooner or later. On the daily as well, for the volume, we can see that we have the highest amount of volume here in the tops, where we might be, of course, in a final stage here for this wave B as an expanding flat. Don't forget, as an A, B, and a C. So we start to see the highest amount of volume, meaning, of course, of sellers coming in. Of course, despite the move, the latest move is just a rebound, guys. It is corrective, and of course we start to see some lower prices after, of course, an ABC finished 3 waves here. Definitely we might start to see, of course, lower prices here. Definitely we have 5 waves down as a leading diagonal. It can be ABC. In case we are bearish, we continue for wave 3. Now, basically, in this move downward, you didn't see yet, of course, the highest amount of volume only here with this single move as, of course, a wave 3. Again, of course, as a signal as well for a wave 3. So even I still believe that this is only the start. This is only the trigger, guys, for something very, very bearish. Can be, of course, something very strong. Even we might still see even higher amount of volume more than this here. And that means, of course, we might see a very strong wave 3 later on, of course, as mentioned, because you might be in an ABC here. This is your 1, 2, 1, 2, and wave 3, 4 and a 5, 4 and a 5, that it might still be unfolding as a potential bearish. And I'm still expecting, of course, a very long wave 3, where, of course, we might see a very high amount of volume here in a wave 3 for this small bear market. And this is regarding, of course, the volume on the daily. On the weekly as well, you can see, of course, that the volume has started to move downward during, of course, our bull run here. You can see, of course, the divergence between the price action and the volume. We start to see, of course, as well, a high amount of volume here for the red, which is the highest in the top here. And of course, currently, lately, in the last week that we had here in this candle, we see, of course, another amount of high volume, meaning, of course, we are still looking for more red potentially in the next week for Bitcoin. That was a deep analysis for the indicator and for Elliott Wave regarding Bitcoin. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your likes and comments, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.